But Tim is a friend of mine, and I have known him for 30 years, I guess now, thereabouts. And we went to college together. We're in our fraternity together, actually pledged together, and that's another story. And he's going to talk in a little while about his running and searching and finding God. A little boy was eagerly looking forward to his birthday party with his friend that he was going to get to go to later in the week. And it was only a few blocks away, so it was no problem. And then a blizzard set in. And the roads got shut down, and there's nothing that they could do. But the boy said, "Dad, it's not that far. It's only a few blocks. You can't drive it, but I can walk it. And I can do it all by myself." Well, he's 9, 8. You know, he didn't want any help because he was a big boy now. But his father wasn't sure. So he said, "Dad, please, all the other kids are going. Everybody else's parents are going to let them go." So the father said, "All right. If that's what you really want to do, I will let you go." So overjoyed, the boy bundled up all of his coats, layer after layer after layer, and plunged out into the storm. The swirling snow's going everywhere, and it's hard for him to see sometimes, but it took him nearly half an hour, what would usually take him 10 minutes, but he trudged through and he got there. And as he's climbing on the porch, and he reaches up to ring the doorbell, he turned, and somehow in the background, he notices a figure in the background. His father had followed him the whole way, far enough back that he didn't know he was there. But to make sure that he was safe, his father had followed him. Now that's a story, and it's probably true somewhere. I know of a true story of a cousin named Brent, whose son has some mental and physical problems, and he's legally blind, and his son got a job finally after some training and was going to have to ride the bus every day here in Oklahoma City. And I know that Brent, for a month or more, walked to the back. He got on the same bus but never said anything, just to make sure that he could get there and get back. I like the idea of a father who would allow his son to tackle something very difficult. Tackle it on their own, but at the same time to make sure that they're there if they're needed. I think that's one of the characteristics and evidences of real love. I'm convinced that each of us needs someone to watch over us, someone who really cares about us, who will celebrate with us when we have the wonderful times in our lives, who will offer us a shoulder to cry on in times of sorrow, and to be there even when we don't know it, and oftentimes when we don't want it. With that in mind, I want you to hear these words again that we just sang from Psalm 139. "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in, behind me and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths of Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light to you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. A man named Bob Buford wrote a book entitled Halftime. Now, I know yesterday was the OU Texas game. This book has absolutely nothing to do with football. It's about finding significance in life. Bob Buford was a businessman who had spent the first half of his life searching for success and came to realize that what he was really searching for was significance. Isn't that what we're all really doing? Dealing with the significant questions of life. Isn't that what this psalmist is doing? Who am I? What am I doing here? What should I be doing in this life? These are questions I think God wants us to seek after. They matter because they have to do with our personal identity. How we answer those questions determines how we live and order our lives. This psalm, that song actually, was sung by the choir at my ordination. This is my favorite psalm in the world. Psalm about God knowing me completely. Even when I do things and say things and think things and run far away, God knows me. The psalm tells us that God is personal. This psalm tells us that God is present. And most importantly, this psalm is about God pursuing us. God is so much bigger than we can understand. Just about the time that I think I've got God all figured out and putting God in a box, I realize I don't know anything. The more I learn about the God, the more I realize that there's so much more I need to learn and need to understand. I discover that the closer I get to God, the further I still have to go. We often think of the vast expanse of the cosmos, billions of stars in our galaxy, billions of galaxies in the universe, and God knows each star by name, beyond comprehension. God is greater than what the mind can fathom, and yet God is someone we feel a personal connection to. O Lord, you have searched me and know me. God is very personal, knows us perfectly. There's nothing hidden from God's knowledge. There are no excuses, no justifications, no fabrications. That's hard to understand, but it's important that we understand. I know that there are those who think that because they have hidden something from everybody else, they've hidden it from God. Nothing could be further from the truth. The psalmist says, you know when I sit down and when I rise up, you perceive me, my thoughts when they are far away. Not only everything we think, but everything we do is known to God. You discern my going in and my lying down, familiar with all my ways, because before a word is on my tongue, you know it, O God. You have a great creator who has intimately made us and knows every part of us. But he not only knows our bodies, he knows the secret places of our minds. It's an awesome thought to realize that nothing I do or think is held back from God. When I do the right thing, but for the wrong reason, God knows that. God is personal, so sang the psalmist. But God is also present. This psalm reminds me that God is with me even when I can't feel him. A friend in Houston once said something very profound to me about whenever God feels absent. She said, perhaps sometimes God is so close that you can't see him. If God is present, he knows my heart. And even when I'm angry, God is present. Even when I'm prideful, he sees me. He knows when I'm overjoyed, but he knows when I am at the depths of sorrow. He knows when I think dark, evil thoughts, yet God's light is even present. And we all think dark, evil thoughts. We all live in dark places sometimes. We can't hide from God because God is always there. Sometimes the thought of God's knowledge or the hidden things that we do become overwhelming to us, and we think we can't go back to God because we've done too much. And God reminds us that he's pursuing us. When this psalm was written, it was commonly assumed that there were many gods, and this hill had a god, and that plain had a god, and this place had a god. And our God lived in Jerusalem, right? The God of Israel couldn't be at other places, but David knew that if he went to the far reaches of the earth, he couldn't get away from God. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I'm in heaven with the greatest joy, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths of sin, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn or settle at the far side of the sea, your right hand will hold me. God is Emmanuel, always with us. I love this psalm because it captures the essence of who we are. We all have times in our lives when we choose to run away. We run away from our problems, we think. We run away from our lives. We run away from the people who love us. And we think we run away from God. But God pursues us, even in those dark places. What the psalmist discovers is a God who is gracious and merciful. In Luke 15, we see a picture of God, a father, who's seeking out his prodigal son. God searches for us until he finds us, because he desires a relationship with us. For God is searching for us long before we ever realize it's happening. I'm going to ask Tim to come up and just say whatever the Spirit leads him to say.
That's a dangerous thing to do. But I guess you can all hear me. Okay. All right. So I've been playing with different ways to say this, and I'm going to say it this way. My name is Tim Pursell, and I am a crystal meth addict. I'm not going to ask how many of you might be, but you know in your heart. That didn't stop me from earning a PhD in history some time ago. I had a 6-year-long relationship with a man. We had a wonderful, loving relationship. We chose not to get married. We chose to live in sin. Even though it was legal to get married at some point, we chose not to. That was my decision. That didn't stop me from being a raging alcoholic the whole time I was with him, even though we were very happy together. I have PTSD from stuff that happened about 4 years ago, getting attacked on Christmas Eve outside the place I worked, losing my mother and my partner within a month of each other. In fact, the last time I was in Oklahoma City was the 26th of April 2012, when my life turned to doo-doo, I'll put it that way, when my partner died here while we were visiting from San Francisco. But don't feel sorry for me. Many of you have probably experienced tragedy. Some of you may have suffered from mental health problems. Some of you may have been homeless, as I was, for 2 years. Some of you may have had chemical dependency issues. Some of you may have yet to experience some of these things. They may be waiting for you. We all experience great tragedy in your life. It was my fortune that it happened when I was young enough to be able to bounce back, right? To be able to bounce back when I was 44. Maybe that's not the way you're used to hearing this story, but that's the way I say it. I don't like when people go, ooh, or ah, or oh, when I say things, because it's a long list of burdens that I bear. When you're talking about take up your cross and follow me, that became rather meaningful for me. But I'll say that cross is heavy and there's more than one, and sometimes it's other people in my parish. I'm pretty happy. I'm probably the happiest I've been in my life. I've been sober and I've been clean for 2 years. First time in my life. I've never been in Oklahoma clean and sober. Don't clap. I'm the most proud of surviving being homeless, because I'll tell you, that's hard. It's hard when you don't have a place to live, when you don't know where you're going to go. I was lucky. Because the day I became fully homeless, I got a call. It was the first of several miracles in my life. I got a call that the rehab bed I'd been waiting for months had come open. So instead of having to be on the street or go to a shelter or go to the airport, because I was about to become a member of this congregation, I believe John was going to fly me to Oklahoma City to make sure I didn't end up on the street. That's the kind of ministry he does. Instead of that, I got a rehab bed. And I still cry about that because I don't know what I would have done except I went in. Actually, that was the second miracle. The first miracle was December 23rd, because that's the day I decided to become Catholic. Now, don't be shocked. I'm a Catholic. I'm a devout Catholic, and I'm here with you folks. But in some ways, Catholics and disciples have a lot in common. We all take communion on Sunday like normal Christian folks should do, right? Now, what's wrong with these other people who don't? What do you go to church if you don't take communion? I don't get it. So you might say becoming a disciple predisposed me to become Catholic. But my best friend in San Francisco is a devout Catholic, and he'd been praying for me through all of the things that were happening. And I was trying to get sober and trying to get packed and trying to move stuff into storage because I'd been evicted and I had nobody to help me. And he showed up on December 23rd and he gave me a lease on life. And I just looked at him and I said, it's got to mean something that it's Christmas and that this is the first act of kindness I have had. And you're here and you've talked to me about converting to Catholicism, so I'm going to do it. And he said, are you sure? It's forever. And I said, I've got to do something to meet some decent people because I've been hanging out with drug addicts and drug dealers and prostitutes. And nothing wrong with those people, really, except that some of them were so broken. They were stealing from me. They weren't helping me. We were all so broken we couldn't do much for each other. I needed someone to come in who was filled with the love of God to help me. So when Jesus sits down with the prostitutes and the tax collectors, it does something for them. They need it. I needed it. All right? Sometimes I think I was a little spark of light because I was around some really bad people. Let me just tell you, there are Satanists. They are real. I have met them, and they are scary. They're not like the ones you meet on the internet, though. Don't go there. I'll just say that. Don't be tempted. It's enough about Satanists. Get thee behind me, Satan. It was 2 years ago that all that happened. I spent 2 years homeless. Now, there's different ways of being homeless. We'll call me homeless light, all right? I wasn't in a tent. I wasn't in a shelter, but I knew people who were. And I got enough education in the process of becoming homeless. And once I was in rehab to go, okay, I think I could survive that. I think I could survive that because I know the right people, the sober people, the kind people who are out there just in hard luck, who might show me where I should pitch my tent, or they'd let me stay with them for a couple days and figure out how to do it so I don't get the crap beaten out of me and get all my stuff stolen. Or maybe that will happen, all right? But I can give the key to my storage locker to someone who's trustworthy so I don't lose everything. I learned these little tactics, and it made it less scary while I was in rehab for 90 days, living with crazy people who were I was in a triple diagnosed facility. Does anybody know what a triple diagnosed facility is? That means you have chemical dependency issues. You have some sort of serious medical condition that's untreated, in my case HIV and hepatitis C. And you have a mental health condition that is serious to severe, in my case PTSD and bipolar. Everybody else did too, except some of them were schizophrenic and on heroin. And I was on crystal meth, so I was like this, and they were like this. We didn't always get along. And it was a mixed bag of gay people, transgendered women, and straight men. And sometimes that made for drama too. Now, until June 9th of this year, I was homeless. I did 90 days of rehab. Why did I do that rehab? Not really because I wanted to quit drugs. I kind of wanted to quit drugs. I was tired of the chaos, but it's really hard to quit drugs. It's really hard. They feel good. There's a reason we do them. I was carrying around a lot of pain, and you made the pain go away by sticking a syringe in my hand and arm and injecting crystal meth, and then, woo, I felt good for a little while. Then the voices would start, and I'd see things and all of that, and it's just a mess. Just a mess. But I had to face that addiction because I've been a crystal meth addict since 1997. That's a long time. I got my PhD in that period. I got a nice job in that period. I did a lot of things in that period. I was able to keep it under control till my mom died in March, and my partner died in April, and I got evicted in May. That was a little too much. And the crystal meth was waiting there for me again after 6 years of sobriety. And I did a line, and then I was off and running for 2.5 years, started injecting. So sometimes sobriety's temporary, and that's okay too, because I got sober again. God willing, I won't ever have to do it again, because I overdosed several times. I don't know that I have it in me. I'm 48 now. It's a little old to be running around with a 20-year-old doing drugs. But have compassion for those who do. It is not as easy to quit as you might think, and I still don't know how I managed to do it. Maybe it's because God was there for me. Maybe it's because my friend consecrated me to Mary. Maybe it's because the good Baptists of Deer Creek Baptist Church have been praying for me since my partner was dying here in St. Anthony Hospital. Maybe it's because John and Sherry have been praying for me. I don't know, but I'm sober now. And I don't want to let people down. Because for 14 years, I didn't play music. I couldn't play music. I was a crystal meth addict. My hands went like this. Trying to keep the hands on the keys, oh my goodness. I can play again. You heard me play today. I'm a musician. I'm underemployed in San Francisco, but I work for a Methodist church. I would be there playing right now. So we could say I made it through that rehab. And then I landed in transitional housing. So I had a roof over my head and a bed. That's why I call it homeless light. But I didn't have a lease. I had no right to be where I was. I had to follow the rules. I had to pee in a cup. I had to live with people who were fresh out of prison, fresh off the street, still selling their bodies for sex or drugs, going in and out of this rehab, because some people would stay for a while, they'd break the rules, they'd bounce out the door, they'd come back, they'd get it together again, we'd sort of become friends, but I was like, do I really want to trust you? Because are you going to just walk out of my life again in a few days? Very hard to trust people when you don't know what's going to happen. Some of you who may have addicts in your family, you know what that's like. You don't ever know what you're going to get, but you try to love them anyway. Some of you who've suffered from addiction may know what that's like. People don't know how to treat you, and they shut the door in your face, and it just hurts like hell. All right. But somehow you got to get the chaos down, and then learn to trust again. And learning to trust is hard. I still don't trust people. All right. I still don't. 2.5 years sober. So I spent a year living in housing provided by the Black Coalition on AIDS. That was fun, right? Because I had AIDS. I didn't have AIDS. I had HIV. All of us had HIV. But I was one of 2 white boys in a house of 12. And I learned about soul food and life in the hood and life on the set and all this other stuff. And it was an eye-opening experience. And I realized I actually had a culture of being a white boy. Though I was no longer a WASP because I'd become Catholic. I don't know what you call a white Anglo-Saxon Catholic. A WASC? I don't know. Anyway, that was a moment like, my ethnicity has changed. Yay! So I'm not here to convert you to Roman Catholicism, but I need to say a few words about what that meant. Because in the depths, God sort of knew me. And I had that moment where I told my friend, okay, I'm going to convert. And then I went to church, to Grace Cathedral. It's a beautiful cathedral on the top of Nob Hill in San Francisco, which is Episcopalian, because that's what I was at the time. And I go into church, beautiful choir, pretty music, stained glass. This is nice. This is cool. Yeah, I could get back into this. This is nice. I bet I could meet some good people. I could join the choir. I could become a priest. What? Where'd that come from? And I'm sitting there and I hear this voice in my head, not the voices that are saying, you're crazy, but a voice that says, yeah, become a priest. You should be up at the altar. Why not? You've done everything else in your life. You've been with the prostitutes. You've sinned. You've done every sin there is in the book. I read Galatians like, yep, done that one, done that one, done that one. Some of them I didn't do, but it's a better story if I say I did. Why not aspire to the priesthood? And I call John Malget. And I say, guess what? I went to church today. He said, yeah, and you decided you wanted to become a priest, didn't you? And I'm like, how did you know? And he says, so the only question is, are you going to become Episcopalian or Roman Catholic? And I said, well, funny you should mention that. So you have an extraordinary man as your minister here, I got to tell you. So the point of this is I'm trying to relate it back to the psalm. In the depths of my despair, my first week in rehab, I go to church. Why? Nobody else wanted to go to church. I had to argue with the people to go to church. I said, really? You're not going to let me go to church? Well, you have to have someone go with you because we don't trust you that you're not going to go out and do drugs. I'm like, well, that's fair. So I got someone to go with me. And God knew me and recognized something in me that I didn't know myself. Not only was I ready to go back to church, I was ready to serve in some way around the altar. So since then, I have become a minister of Holy Communion. I'm a lector in my parish. I'm extremely active. And I have a spiritual advisor who I'm talking to seriously about becoming a priest or entering a monastery. Now, I'm too old for all this, right? My past is a little bit sordid for them, and I don't come with money to give to the church, which might smooth the way in. I am poor, right? But I can relate to people. I can relate to people who are wealthy and privileged, because I was for a while. I rolled as a millionaire for 2 years. I have been homeless. I have spent a night in a shelter. I've volunteered at them too. I've seen the world from a lot of different ways, and God knows that. And I can't hide anything from God, and that's why I can stand up and say, my name is Tim Pursell. I'm a crystal meth addict. Some people might call me other names, some of which I shouldn't say in church, but we'll say they are euphemisms for homosexual. I say them too, because that is who I am. Even though I'm celibate, I'm chaste, I'm sober, I'm living a pretty good life on $400 a month in San Francisco. I am below the poverty level. I am what is called extremely low income. I'm proud of that because somehow I make it work, because I've learned to ask for help. That was one of the hardest things, to go to people and ask for help, to go to my social worker and say, is there any way I can get my cat's teeth cleaned? Because I don't have $600. And we found a way. Went to my social worker. Is there any way to get me a new mattress? Because I've got this new housing now. I got permanent housing in June, and I can have my queen size bed, but my mattress got stolen. And we found a way to do that, right? So some pretty amazing things have happened. The most amazing thing of all, I will say, relates to the liturgical year. Now, you all do the liturgical year in the disciples, right? You don't do Ash Wednesday, do you? Yeah. You do Ash Wednesday? Do you do Holy Thursday? Good Friday? Okay, those are all terms. So I said the 26th of April 2012, my life changed in Oklahoma City. Easter had just happened, and my partner died in St. Anthony Hospital. And that very same day, I said, please get me on an airplane. I want to get out of here, and I never want to come back. Because it had just been 5 weeks of hell. 5 weeks of hell. And I wanted to get home to San Francisco and get away from the pain that was here. My family had fallen apart after my mother's death. It's still kind of rocky. He talks about the parable of prodigal sons because we've been talking. I came home to see my dad for the first time in 4.5 years. He welcomed me with open arms. My older brothers are like, we don't want to see him. They can't forgive me. They're drug addicts too, but they just smoke pot. So pot is better than crystal meth. And I'm the sober one, so there it is, whatever. All right. 3rd of March 2014, my life changed again. I got the diagnosis that I had HIV and hepatitis C. That was Ash Wednesday. Want to guess what my first response was when I woke up from being passed out in the hospital after an overdose to get this news? Is there a priest? And I took ashes. I wasn't Catholic. I don't know why I did that. Somehow the Lord moved me to do that. I got out of rehab and got temporary housing on Holy Thursday of 2015, right? it was Easter. So I went into Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and my reception into the Catholic Church with temporary housing. I thought I was living the high life, because after 90 days of living with people who would take a crap in the sink, I had my own room that locked. And it was a tiny room, but I felt like I had gone to town, like little stair steps back. And then this past May, it was in the middle of Lent, actually. It was in February. I got the news that I was going to go to Lourdes in France. Anybody know what Lourdes is? It's a major Catholic shrine in France, sacred to Mary. Mary appeared to St. Bernadette of Lourdes. You may not believe that. I believe that. And some pretty special things happened to me. I've had some healing from my PTSD. I still have it. Doesn't bother me quite as much. Some of the events from the past, I'm like, okay, it happened. It really happened. And I need to just forgive the people that did those things, because I'm tired of carrying that pain around. Some other things that happened were I got the news that I was actually cured of hepatitis C. Now, was that a miracle? Maybe it's a miracle that there's drugs available and I could get on them, but I got rid of hepatitis C. I was lucky enough to get it twice, so don't get hepatitis C. I got it from being a drug addict, but you can get it from other things as well. That's my little promotional thing for don't get hepatitis. And I also got the news that I had permanent housing. Permanent housing. I have a lease. I have roommates. They're not the ideal roommates, but nobody's fresh out of prison. Nobody is actively selling their body for drugs. They're trying to rebuild their lives too. And there's nothing wrong with any of that other stuff I'm talking about. It's just that these are two people who are a little more like me. They've been stable for a while. They're trying to get more stable. I'm the only one that's employed, so we're all living on nothing. But we live in the Mission, which is a really nice part of town to live in because it's cheap and it's sunny, and I get to learn Spanish finally. So Lord, search me and know me and see that I speak German and Dutch, and I really need to speak Spanish, so put me in the Mission and I can learn to do that. So I'm going to say this. It's a miracle that I survived 3 overdoses. It's a miracle that I got a rehab bed the day I had to move out of my apartment. It's a miracle that on Holy Thursday, I got my first shot at temporary housing, so I knew I wasn't going to be in the shelter or have to be homeless again. And it's a miracle that I went to Lourdes, and while I was there, I really got confirmed in my faith. I didn't know all this stuff about myself, but God seemed to know it. God seemed to know that I needed to get sober. And I'll put it this way, Our Lady, Mary, seemed to be there as well. She's been there throughout my life since I first went to Mass at St. Mary's Church in Medford, Oklahoma in 1972. So I say that because without knowing it, I've been on a spiritual path. And I think now my eyes are finally open so I can see where it goes. Will it lead to the priesthood? I don't know. If y'all think that'd be cool, pray for me. Will it lead to being in a monastery? I don't know, but I'm interviewing with 2 monasteries here in Oklahoma, because who knew there were many monasteries in Oklahoma? Will it just end with me being a single guy who's an active parishioner without very much money, but that's always there doing things like helping with the pumpkin patch or playing with the choir or all the things I do with my parish now? It might be that. That's a good life. That's all I have to say.
There's a children's book called The Runaway Bunny. Once there was a little bunny who wanted to run away, so he said to his mother, "I'm running away." "If you run away," said his mother, "I will run after you, for you are my little bunny." "If you run after me," said the little bunny, "I will become a fish in a trout stream, and I will swim away from you." "If you become a fish in a trout stream," his mother said, "I will become a fisherman, and I will fish for you." No matter where we hide, no matter where we run, no matter what we do, God will find us. Search us, O God, and know our hearts. Test us and know our thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in us, and lead us in the way everlasting.